talking about cultivating healthy conversation, communication, and conflict resolution, which is what I get so excited about. I'll never forget, it wasn't long after we had children that I walked in one day and I was out working, and I had been working on a number of different projects, and I had a number of different things cooking, and Christy was staying at home with our son Landon. And I remember it just being a rude awakening for her, because she had lost her identity as a working woman. She desired to stay home, but I don't think she realized how much she was losing and giving up by doing that. And I came home one day, and I remember walking in, and the way she describes it is I came sauntering in, wafting in the smell of some fresh latte, and she's standing there in sweatpants that she wore to bed the night before, hair in a ponytail, no makeup, banana puree spackled all over her shirt, and she just started weeping in tears. And I'll never forget the phrase she said to me. She said, "Josh, why don't you ever ask me about what's on my heart?" And it was a rude awakening for me to realize here I am helping families, helping marriages, and helping people get married. And yet here I am missing my wife's heart. And she said, to be fair to me, she didn't even know that she was that lost and losing her heart that much. But it wasn't long after that I went to a leadership retreat, because what do you do when your wife tells you that you're not paying attention to her heart? You leave her for a week with your kids, and you go to a leadership retreat. I'm kidding. I had her blessing to go, but that's what I did. And in that leadership retreat, I'll never forget the leader telling us that some of the most powerful leaders in the world have the ability to not just have content-based conversation, not just conversation about the business of the day and where we're taking the kids and how we're doing life and how work was today and all those types of things, but who we interacted with, but process-based conversation. So in other words, how we feel about what it is that we experienced that day. Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful for relationship, for interacting, but also for our own health and well-being, because now we're connected to who we truly are and how we're processing the world around us. And so I remember coming back from that leadership retreat telling Christy, I said, I really learned something at this that I want to apply in our marriage. And so what we started doing is we started taking 15 minutes a day. And this is what I really want to encourage you to do with your fiance to cultivate the environment of healthy relationship in your relationship now as you get ready to get married. 15 minutes a day where you sit together, and what you'll do is you'll each take a turn. One of you starts and you say one positive emotion that happened to you that day. You might need to pull out a feelings chart. You can go online, you can find these somewhere. Pull out a feelings chart and say one positive emotion of something that happened to you today. So not only are you just saying, I worked today and I had this interaction with this person. Say, I'm excited about this project. I felt a lot of joy when I stepped outside and went for a walk during lunch. I was excited about lunch today because you made it for me, and you put this note in there when I opened it up, and I was surprised by it. And I just felt loved. Right? What is one positive emotion that you had about the day? And then what was one negative emotion or one uncomfortable emotion? It doesn't even need to be negative. It can be uncomfortable. It didn't feel well. I felt embarrassed, when this happened. I felt rejected when this happened. I felt jealous of this person. I was envious when I went on Instagram. What is a negative emotion that you felt that day about something? And tell your fiance. Why is this so important? This is important because you are hearing what's happening in the deeper recesses of your fiance's heart. You're hearing not just what's going on about their day, you're hearing the why. You're hearing the deeper stuff. And when you hear that deeper stuff, you have insight into how to better fight for your spouse's or your fiance's heart. You know how to fight differently. And so this idea of cultivating this environment is really powerful by proactively sitting down each day. And you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this by just sitting at each other and looking each other in the eyes and saying, how you feeling? You can do this while you're unloading the dishwasher, loading the dishwasher, making dinner together, whatever that looks like. But just use sometimes, by the way, this isn't just 15 minutes. Sometimes it's 5. Sometimes it's 2 hours. There's times where if my wife would have said to me, I want to talk to you for 2 hours tonight about what I'm experiencing and feeling right now, I'd be like, no way, I ain't got 2 hours for that. But when you sit down, you say, you know what, I got 15 minutes. Sometimes it'll turn into 2 hours. And those 2-hour conversations, they've been rare. But man, have they been a turning point for our marriage and the deeper level of intimacy that we've experienced, because I was able to sit with her in her grief, or she was able to sit with me in my sadness or sorrow, maybe a loss of a loved one or that type of thing. And so take 15 minutes. One fiance goes first, the other fiance goes next. And here's the key, sit in it. Don't try to fix anything. If there's an uncomfortable or negative emotion, don't try to fix it, just sit in it. And because here's the reality, if we suppress our negative emotion, what we do is we also suppress the positive. True healthy relationship and true healthy relating is our ability to experience a wide range of emotion from positive to negative, and being able to comfortable to uncomfortable, and being able to enjoy and experience relationship in a powerful way. And so I really want to encourage you to do that, because here's why. That's the proactive way of doing this. The reactive way, what happens when you hit a conflict? What happens when you do start to argue? The proactive way will help you have less arguments, and what you'll do is you'll solve them quicker when you do have them. That's what that 15 minutes a day will do for you. But what you're doing is you're setting yourself up to be able to truly enter into the story your spouse is, or your fiance is telling him or herself. Right? You're entering in to hear their story. What is the story they're saying about the situation that you're arguing about? What is the story they're saying to themselves about the conflict that you're having? I'll never forget a situation I had. I alluded to it earlier, where I was traveling, I was speaking, and I came home. It was a Wednesday night. I was looking forward to spending time with my wife. I was going to take her on a date night on Thursday night. I knew Thursday night I was going to take her on a date night. And this is another conversation to have. What are your expectations around date night, right? You want to make sure you have those conversations. And I hadn't been connecting with her that much because I was on the road and I was traveling and I had a lot going on. And for whatever reason, we chose to have 2 sets of friends over that night for dinner. So there were 6 of us for dinner on that Wednesday night that I'd gotten home. And we're meeting in the living room after dinner. We're having dessert. We're having coffee and tea. And all kids were upstairs playing. And I remember Christy talking to the other ladies, excited about the girls' night that they were having Thursday night. Well, she didn't tell me that. All I was looking for was the date night. Forward to was the date night. And I remember, and I must have said something to her that it didn't go over very well. You know how sometimes you'll say something and it doesn't go over the way that you, or it goes over differently. At least your fiance thinks it goes over differently than the way you remember it. I said something to the effect of, why didn't you tell me you were going out with your friends tomorrow night? And she would say that I said it more harshly, but I did it in front of our friends. And at that point, you could just feel the emotional coldness of the night. And I remember sending our friends home. We kind of were cordial the rest of the night, but as soon as that door closed and we got our friends out the door, it was like frozen too. It was icicles coming down the wall. It was like an emotional ice box in our house. And but remember, the story I'm telling myself is that she didn't tell me about this girls' night, and she clearly doesn't miss me the way that I miss her, because I was planning a date night. She didn't plan a date night, but I didn't tell her and she didn't tell me, so we were missing one another. I locked all the doors. I went upstairs, and she was already upstairs getting ready for bed. And I remember walking in. I remember going through my head, this is what I'm going to say to her, because she needs to understand how much I miss her. Pro-relationship thoughts. Remember, see, I was thinking good. I had pro-relationship thoughts. But as I walked in, she looked at me and she said, don't you ever speak to me that way again in front of our friends. And she said it pretty harshly. I remember, like, don't you ever speak to me that way again in front of our friends. And me, I just I was like, oh man, remember earlier in our conversations, we talked about how your fiance manages stress. How does your fiance manage when their fight, flight, and freeze response is going off in an overreactive moment when you're arguing with one another? What you want to do is you want to look at, what is the story my spouse is telling? What is the story my fiance is telling him or herself in this moment right now? And I remember the story I was telling myself was, I miss you. And now I could have gone out there. I could have said something to her that simply said, what do you mean? I could have tried to defend myself. I could have said, you don't miss me. And she would have said something to the effect of, can't you see how awkward that was? Like, come on. And you know the trajectory of that conversation is going to go somewhere that you don't want it to go. It's not going to be pretty. But if you walk out there, let's go back to what we just said in the last session. You're willing to endure the uncomfortable emotions. You're willing to take sole responsibility of your role in the conflict. And you're willing to give up blame. I'm walking out there and I'm not using the word you. I'm using the word I. I'm sorry that I spoke to you that way. I'm taking sole responsibility for my role. I have to put off my concern. I have to put off my, my argument, my desire to focus on hers. Because now all of a sudden, hers is what matters most. She brought it up to me first. And she was angry. She was hurt. She felt betrayed. Now, if she's my teammate, we have an opponent. And we got to rebuild emotional intimacy. So I have to take full responsibility for that. So my ability to come out and say, I am so sorry for the way that I spoke to you. I've really missed you these last few days. And I was really looking forward to a date night tomorrow night with you. And I'm sorry that my hurt came out. I'm sorry that my disappointment. I'm sorry that the way that I felt, that it came out in such a hurtful way to you in front of our friends. I'm sorry about that. Do you see the difference that's going to take versus me defending myself or using you in the conversation, right? I'm taking responsibility. So when you hit this moment, think about, what is the story my fiance is telling him or herself? How can I own my role in it? By using I statements, having a pro-relationship thought, having a way that I can fight for our team, and then make it right. That's the power of cultivating, both proactively, 15 minutes a day, reactively, the story my spouse is telling, or the story my fiance is telling him or herself. Let's cultivate healthy communication and fight for one another, not with one another.